What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are so excited. I hope you are pumped right now for the most action-packed hour you have ever received in your entire life. Why? Because this hour got it all, baby. Hope, inspiration, motivation, encouragement, empowerment, the whole nine, baby. So grab a chair, pull up a couple shots, let your hair down, and kick those shoes off, and get ready to receive the most jam-packed hour you have ever received in your entire life, baby. Let's go! Woo!
Joseph JAFFE is not famous. I'm kind of famous. I'm Jerry Springer. And JAFFE is no host. He'd be lucky to be in my audience, let alone on my show. Well, maybe he's crazy enough to be on my show. I take that back. And that's not a good thing.
Am I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian doesn't want to see anyone else. Piss off!
That's the one. Because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Kant was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date. Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, welcome everybody. It is Monday, December 6th. I had to check for a moment. It is the final week of the show at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, although it is live right now in its new time. So a little bit of a test to see what happens at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm excited to move to 1 p.m. It's going to be lunchtime on the East Coast. It's going to be mid-morning on the West Coast. It'll be drive time or beer time or cocktail time in Europe. Seems like a good time for a little bit of Joseph JAFFE is not famous. Let's see who is with us today. Lubna, I think you might be converted now. Welcome. Lubna says, let's go. Dinesh is here on Twitch, and Manif, the ever-present Manif, is here. And Manif, it just wouldn't be the same without you. Manif has been here since the very beginning of this little experiment that we call Joseph JAFFE becoming a talk show host, which, according to Jerry Springer, I have no business doing. But, you know, I'm not going to listen to him. I've never listened to anyone in my life. But the voices inside my head, multiple voices. Well, I'm excited for this week. Hello, Bob Farnham. I send love back to you. Suzanne Kounkel. Do not use the U. The U is just there for you, but it is not there in terms of pronunciation. I will get back to Suzanne in a moment. Tomorrow, Gary Henderson is here. His new book, his first book, launches called The Clubhouse Creator. We are very, very excited. He is more excited. Whitney Lauritsen, one of my fellow Rally Creator coin holders, is here, and then Glenn Lundy is here on Thursday. So something to look forward to. And then we wrap up for the year, and I will be back in January at our new time slot. So I couldn't think of a better guest than my guest today, Suzanne Kounkel, and we will get to her shortly. But before we do that, I have things for you. I have many things for you, many wonderful things for you, starting off with free JAFFE coin, my crypto creator coin. Crypto may be in the toilet at the moment, but the JAFFE coin doesn't have to be. And this is an opportunity for you to shine your phone on this QR code. It is live right now between 1 and 2 p.m. I geek out at the fact that at 2 p.m., 2:01, this QR code is not live anymore. So you can watch the show on demand. You're very welcome to, but, and it is a big but, you will not get rewarded This is all about the live streaming era, which is exactly why when Tim Whittle is here and he says, excited to listen, first time listener and watcher, I get to shout out to you and say, Tim, welcome to the show. This is, I believe, the future of entertainment, of news, of community in this Web 3.0 world. I've been doing a lot of experimentation. I just produced a comic that you can see a little boy says to his teacher, when I grow up, I want to be a miner. The teacher's thinking, poor kid is going to be down in the mines and the coal mines. But of course, the kid is thinking about becoming a crypto miner and a tycoon. Why this is so cool. And I went and I did a little bit of a experiment, which is I went to like iStock Photo and found out, what does a cartoon cost? The cartoon costs about $12. And so I decided to NFT it and sell it at $12. But where it gets really interesting is that 50% of the proceeds goes to someone on Fiverr who actually designed it for me. So the creator behind this gets compensation for, in perpetuity. So they get 50%, I get 50%. I was the copywriter and the creative director. They were the designer as well. And by purchasing that NFT, you actually get rights to put it in a deck, an investor deck, a keynote presentation, training program. It's really, really exciting stuff. Lubna says, thank you for the JAFFE coin. You're welcome. Everyone is welcome. I appreciate you spending an hour of your time with me. Well, something else I did is I also put out 2 different NFTs. One is of the first 50 interviews of my show. And the other one, the gold one, well, the gold one is not for sale, but today Suzanne will get one of those gold ones. It is just a VIP gift of gratitude that I give to all of my guests, my regulars, people that contribute a lot. But if you were to actually purchase that $54 NFT on the left, you get a bunch of things, including an ebook, including access to backstage passes, pre-tapings, auditions, reunions. And if you spend $2,500, there are a few that are at $2,500, you actually get to sponsor the show. And that is exactly what GTM Hub did. GTM Hub went and bought one of those $2,500 NFTs. And so they're sponsoring the show the whole week. So I get to do things like put their logo up in the top right for the rest of this show. I also decided to dedicate the seated soliloquy to GTM Hub. But instead of creating a monologue called OKR, because, it's OKRs, I thought what might be, I cannot believe I actually just did, I just went OKR, I just did it again. I decided that I would actually bring the CMO of GTM Hub onto the show. So Jeremy Epstein, welcome to the show. You are live around the world on Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous.
Hey, this is amazing. Your audience is fantastic. And after seeing your intro and feeling it from the green room, I'm not even sure, I'm definitely not worthy of being a guest on this show, but I'm not even sure I'm worthy of sponsoring this thing. That's how high quality this is.
You know what? It's actually, for me, it's personally very emotional because you are the first official sponsor of the show, and it's not something that I didn't do the show to monetize. I did the show to help people, that was stuck at home. And I will continue to pledge that to my guests. But in this particular case, they say you never forget the first. I will never forget you and sponsoring the show. And I hope it is worth your while. But enough about me.
No, actually, I want to throw one thing, because what you just talked about with your creator coin, and the reason why we wanted to buy it is because of the fact that you started off focusing on community and value. And then we wanted to be associated with that because you've built a community of people who trust you. So that's why it makes sense to us. You're exactly the kind of person we want to put our money behind.
Well, I appreciate that. But, as I said, enough about me. What I want to talk about is you. What I want to talk about is, and I have to say, like, me, I wrote a book called Life After the 30-Second Spot. So I'm not about traditional interruptive. I'm about relevance. I'm about resonance. I'm about education. I had never heard of OKRs, but when we sat down and had a chat and you were briefing me, it suddenly just hit me, which is this is the perfect segment, which is to educate people and talk about OKRs. And when I think about, and you told me some of the biggest companies on this planet, and guess what? The companies that are growing right now, they're all using it. So I'm going to disappear for a minute or two. I would just love you to have the stage and talk about what are OKRs and why do we need to care and pay attention?
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. You know, the challenge that I think every organization faces, and I know this from a marketing perspective, is how do we effectively align the tactical activities that our team does every single day with the strategies that we and our organization put together? This is what we call strategy execution, right? We have the 3 stages that we're all familiar with. We have a strategy development phase. We all know how sexy that can be. The strategy deployment phase, which usually involves, you know, a bunch of PowerPoints and emails, what have you. And then we have the strategy execution, where we try to do what we said we were going to do. Well, things, as you know, tend to break down in that deployment and particularly in that execution phase. And all the more so when you have a global distributed workforce, working hybrid, knowledge workers who aren't measured on the clock. So basically what we focus on is this problem of how do you drive alignment, collaboration, coordination, and most importantly, outcomes across an entire organization, whether it's your marketing department or your entire enterprise, to drive against the most important outcomes and the objectives that you have in the organization. So the most effective proven methodology for this world as we transition from sort of the industrial output-minded, time-based mentality, now hyperspeed to the outcome effectiveness, value-based companies that we have. That bridge is empowered by something that's known as OKRs, or stands for objectives and key results. As we like to say, they're simple in practice, but they're difficult in execution. And the reason why is it's about simplifying and narrowing the things that you put your attention and your effort on as an organization, and then all throughout your enterprise, to decide what is most important and what is not important. So you pick your objectives, you identify 3 to 5 key results that will determine the success of that objective. And then you basically say, I'm not going to do anything else. And that's the discipline that's really the power, the superpower, as we like to say, behind OKRs, and why Google and Dropbox and Uber and Apple and Red Hat and, you know, more and more companies, to Joseph's point, the companies that are growing have adopted this, because it's then you have a framework that works and is proven. It doesn't work at scale without software, but it's a proven methodology to say, these are the most important things. This is what we're going to do. By definition, this is what we're not going to do. And everybody throughout the organization has that visibility. And then you, of course, can track it in real time and adjust as necessary. Final thing I'll say on this is, I am of the belief, and yes, I have skin in the game, and I'm involved in one of the fastest growing SaaS platforms on the planet, supporting this specifically, but it goes all the way back to Peter Drucker and Andy Grove and Google. It has a history beyond us. And basically, I am of the opinion that by the end of this decade, every organization that makes it is going to use this methodology. Now, whether they use us or not is a different story, but they will use this methodology because it's so powerful. So if you haven't learned about it, I encourage you to go study objectives and key results. Obviously, we have a ton of resources on our blog at gtmhub.com. But I'm looking forward to the conversation, and it's super powerful for CMOs. Thank you for the time, Joseph.
Amazing. And you know, I think we can announce that Peter Drucker will be on the show in January. So
he bought your second NFT, I know.
Yeah, just kidding. Russell Eubanks says OKRs for the win, and Lubna seconds that. I have many questions for you, and what I'd like to do is maybe have you back later in the week to continue the conversation, do another 5-minute slot, maybe on Wednesday and Thursday. Tomorrow, we're just dedicating to the Clubhouse creator. But I would love for you to come back. I have questions about, for example, what would an OKR be for my show? You know, would it be, you know, being bought by CNBC, or would it be a sponsor? Is it a means, or is it a means to, you know, is it an end or a means to an end? I want to know what a marketing OKR is, especially when there's softer sometimes goals. So there are many questions, but here's what I'm going to do now, because everybody is waiting for Suzanne.
As they should.
As we all should, is there is a little offer for people, and it is a freebie. You can download GTM Hub's Achieve Outsized Results as a Modern Marketing Executive. It is a white paper, and you can download it. And by the way, if you're worried about that long URL, I just posted it or pasted it into the comments, so you should see that on whatever channel you are watching the show on right now. And Jeremy, I will see you hopefully later in the week.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And that was my first sponsor. I will never forget him. And you know what? I've just met her, but I will also never forget my new friend, which is Suzanne Kounkel. And I want to give you a little bit of background on Suzanne, and then we'll bring her onto the show. I'll even give you some music for her. Not that, because that's my rimshot one. That, you know what, that's too peaceful. Let's go with this one. There we go. This is what happens when you have a production staff of one. Suzanne Kounkel is the Chief Marketing Officer of Deloitte, where she pushes the bounds of creativity and collaboration in pursuit of two intertwined goals: happy clients and healthy business growth. She often jokes that after advising her clients on the achieving profitable growth through marketing and sales activities for 20 years, her current role is penance for the times she thought it should be easier or faster, better, cheaper, or faster. I've been down that path as well. Suzanne sits on the board of directors for the Ad Council and is a member of the Adweek Diversity and Inclusion Council, as well as a member of ANA's Global CMO Growth Council. She is a frequent speaker and interviewee on topics including purpose-driven brand, elevating the human experience within B2B marketing, and the ethical use of data within marketing. Let's welcome her onto the show. Suzanne, welcome.
Hi, it's great to be here.
It's great to have you as well. And there is much to discuss, but I know exactly where we should start. Where we should start is the fact that it is today, appropriately, I guess, National Miners Day. I'm not sure whether we are talking about the coal miner or the crypto miner, but I did have a question for you relating to this, and I always try and find a question for my guests, which is, there is no doubt that there are new roles that are emerging, right, in the world, in the talent world. There are old jobs that are falling away. There are new jobs that are emerging. What's your point of view in terms of maybe personal and professional, in terms of how to anticipate, how to plan for these new roles? And certainly if you are someone who is working in an under threat role, how do you unlearn and learn? How do you adapt? How do you diversify and stay relevant?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're actually doing quite a bit of work right now within Deloitte in my role as CMO to kind of tease apart roles and sort of change roles dramatically to take advantage of a lot of the modern marketing techniques. But the one thing that I would say, and it's something I actually do both for me personally, and I do it every week with my 13-year-old son, Max, is we get together on Friday and talk about when we were nervous during the week. And our goal is to always make sure that we are uncomfortable or nervous at least once a week. And so that's been really important for actually both of us. And so I do think that that's the first thing, is kind of getting comfortable with always being somewhat uncomfortable, because it means that you're probably in a good spot and trying new things and learning new things. I would say that, while it is scary how much the job market is, sliding and slipping and seeming to take favorites, I will say that on the flip side, access to information has never been more democratized as it is today. So I do think people can really take advantage. I mean, everything from things like your show and your blog and books and kind of YouTube and all that sort of thing is just pretty extraordinary. So So that would be my advice, is just always be listening, looking, reading, watching, and making sure that you're familiar enough with it, because, and candidly, it's one of the things that, as I came into consulting a million years ago, it was one of the things that I always tried to do, because if you think about that world, you're with new clients, solving new problems. And one of the things that I would always do with a problem is just spend some amount of time saying, well, I may not know everything about this. What are things that I know that are similar that I could try to break down some of the component pieces and bring that to the table? And then where can I go to fill in the gaps around my knowledge? Which is, again, another tip. I think in today's world, it's all about how we collectively solve problems, not about how we individually solve them. So, kind of the notion of phoning a friend, I think, is really important in today's world. So just a couple of thoughts off the top of my head.
I mean, those are, we could spend the next 40 minutes just talking about those pearls of wisdom. I always have a bit of fun with my guests, which is I basically tell them what their next book is going to be called. And I think yours might be called Phone a Friend Marketing. I actually love that idea, about being able to be, it's not even referential, it's being able to seek out help. Because it's not just about access to information, it's actually access to people that are willing to help, that want to help. Now, in this whole virtual world, we're just seeing a lot more collaboration and a lot more people that are leaning in to the old saying. I mean, it's not even the old saying, the new saying. Maybe it's an old saying that's new again. Helping is the new selling.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, and it's also the old, I think it's from an African proverb about, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. So so we definitely embrace that very significantly at Deloitte.
Well, you've got Russell and Lubna that like Phone a Friend Marketing as well. Maybe they're registering the URL for you, and they'll and they'll send it to you. Also, Lubna mentions that she worked for Deloitte many years ago as an intern. So
I
there
love
you
that.
go. It's degrees of Deloitte separation. So before we get into the serious marketing stuff, I always like to get to know my guest. And so we have, the production team might just be one person, but we have about 25 private investigators that really go out and try and uncover all the dirt about our guests. And so we call this segment Fun Facts. And what did we find out about you, Suzanne? Are you getting nervous right now? You don't need
I
to
am
be.
getting a little nervous.
You don't need to be too nervous. But the thing that we actually found out is that if you weren't doing this job, you would be a professional tennis player or host a talk show like David Letterman. You look very good as a talk show host, I have to say.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Let's see. Let's vote in 30 more minutes.
well, right now you're a guest, but I'm gonna give you an open invitation that if ever you would like to come back and be my co-host and maybe do a co-hosted show, you have a place here on Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous.
Well, I appreciate it. And it is one thing that I love about the pivot that you've made, and you would know this well, but being the host is infinitely harder than it is to be the guest, because it really is sort of, the lead dance partner. So so hats off to you that you do that so well.
You know what, it has been, but I'll tell you that becoming an active listener has been the key. And when I started this, I would write out my questions. Now there are no questions. I ask, as I did of you, what are the 3 things that are on your mind? Because A, I want it to be about you, not about me. And second of all, if I'm really actively listening, I don't need to be going to questions. I can just let the conversation flow and go where it should. And so, but I can also bring it back to the fact that you said something that's very interesting, talking about being a host, right? You spoke about, as a CMO, one of the challenges is to speak less to be heard and remembered more in the marketplace. And so I love this idea, because the idea says, it even goes back to what I would say is, we buy media a year, in the whole antiquated system that says we talk whether we have something to say or not, whether that is something that is compelling or not. But what you're basically talking about is when you say something, let it be something of meaning and of substance. And I love this concept of being remembered for something substantial.
Yeah, absolutely. It is one of the things that's top of my mind. If you think about Deloitte, and for those of you that are a little bit less familiar, it's a large private partnership. We, have over 50 billion in revenue. We have 345,000 people globally. We have a very complex product offering, if you put it in sort of the vernacular of other large organizations. And what we have historically done is talk a lot about our products. So, one of the other things I like to say internally is sort of we talk too much about the Lego pieces rather than the castle that the Lego pieces together build, right? So it's that same notion of let's speak in more thematic terms so that our clients can really know who we are and how we're different, and worry a little bit less about all of the component parts that we can give to them at the time that they can hear that, but we don't need to be sort of saying those kind of thematic things in the marketplace as much as we do today.
There's a very, very interesting point that comes out of it, because the castle, the finished product,
Right.
in a way represents the vision. And it might
Yes.
be big, hairy, and audacious, and it might seem almost unattainable. But I guess if we get lost in the weeds, if we get lost in the minutia, if we get lost in the building blocks, to your point, we may never get to that finish line. And certainly when we need other people to come with us,
Right.
and even going back to talent, how do you get someone to stick around? How do you get someone to join? How do you get someone to join in when there isn't a vision? And I wonder if that's maybe what marketing is struggling to attain or to reach, not just vision for brands, but a vision for marketing itself.
Yeah, I do think that there's, I think that marketing organizations in general are, the expectations for them have gotten so complicated, and they seem to be at odds, right? So if you think about, brand versus demand, if you think about, the emotions and the creativity versus selling, and one of the things I always talk to my teams and to peer CMOs about is that none of those things can be or statements; they have to be and statements. And so that's what makes it difficult, but that also is the power and the magic of it. And actually, going back to something that Jeremy said, that's why OKRs, in my opinion, are so important to CMOs today for two reasons. One, it does align the C-suite on how, making sure we're crystal clear that we're talking in the same language to each other. And then the second thing is it does allow our people to know what to do more of, because in today's kind of complex, such a demanding environment, it's as important to know what not to do as to know what to do. And so I think that some of that measurement piece is so important, to being very clear on those dimensions.
I have to say, like, I can see him in the background in the green room, and he literally just did that. I mean, he was cheering you on. I'm just going to bring him back for a little cameo. Cheer her yourself.
I was thinking, if this Deloitte thing doesn't ever work out for Suzanne, I know where I'm going to bring her next. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, your phone a friend marketing kind of concept, I know I'm talking my own book here, but for me, it's all about that culture. And what OKRs bring is transparency and accountability. So now I can look at anyone in the organization, understand what their focus is, and they understand mine. And then that facilitates that sort of cross network, cross silo collaboration that you want. And I mean, when you said it's as much about what you don't do as what you do, especially for marketing, because the spotlight is so intense on us and we have very clear results. I mean, I was just like, Suzanne's like a gift from heaven.
Well, she's the new co-host of the show. So
apparently, yeah. I'm sold.
Well, listen, my sole purpose is to get her to come back as the co-host and you to come back as a sponsor. So I have one more surprise for you, which is normally on our show on a Monday. Gregarious, who is an amazing entrepreneur, he sends in a segment on entrepreneurship. So he sent this one in today because it is always part of our Monday show. You might just get a kick out of it.
Okay, so I guess today's OKR day. So let's talk about OKRs. So an OKR is what they call an objective and key result. And it's a really important thing for everybody in every part of your life, because what they're really about is trying to determine where do you want to be and how do you plan to get there, right? And so when you, as a startup, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, right, and of course, obviously in your own personal goals, what you want to do is you want to figure out what is the most, what is the key result that we want to drive this quarter, this 6 months, this year. Don't set these really, really short, right? OKRs are not meant to be like lived out over a course of a week. You usually give yourself 3 months to sort of figure out how to accomplish or move yourself in some direction in a meaningful way. Now, what should you do? How many of these should you have? Easy. 1 or 2. Don't pick too many unless you got a massive team and you got a lot of people to be working on this stuff. But 1 or 2 things is probably plenty of work for you to do. The secret to picking one is to make sure you pick something that's measurable, right? So find a goal and then figure out a way to measure that you've meaningfully moved in approach of that goal, right? So let's say it's revenue. Well, great. You could take where you are today, how much have you sold, and how much do you want to set as a goal? Now, it's important when you do this to set realistic goals, all right? There's always a great, like, stretch kind of goal, right? Or maybe something where you'd hope to get a little bit past or beyond, but understand what's possible based on the other dynamics going on in your business right now. So you can't go from 0 to 1 million in 3 months. Well, maybe you could. Maybe there's a whole bunch of things happening, but realistically speaking, maybe it's more reasonable to say, like, great, I'd like to get to $250,000 in revenue. I'd like to get to my first dollar in revenue if you're at 0. So think about goals that are meaningful and achievable, right? And then make sure that you're measuring along the way. Now, here's the last bit on this. That measurement, you need to codify that. You need to instrument, you need to do whatever it takes to make that measurement process real so that you're not like sort of waiting till the end of the 3 months to figure out if you've actually gone about getting to it, right? Because the goal with an OKR is obviously to exceed it, but also to sort of track it along the way as you're moving towards it. And then also to start to frame your actions, your activities, your thoughts around how they're moving that OKR itself. These are complicated only if you make them so, right? So you probably got a lot of great content today about OKRs. I hope this was a little bit helpful for you as well, and we will see you next time. Oh, and by the way, Happy New Year.
That was Greg, and I had to take, I took Jeremy. I'm giving him too much, so I don't want to spoil him. Suzanne, I want to go to something else that's interesting about you, which is, and you're going to have to think about, to think like what image has he got associated with the fact that you love Lincoln Douglas debating and format. I think we should riff off this to qualify and prepare leaders. Now, clearly this was not you. It must be a relative who looks exactly like you, but there you are back in the day attending, or at least that must be a great grandmother, etc. What can you tell us? I mean, the thing that's interesting when we think about debate and format and leadership, it seems to me that is in short supply when it comes to marketing and marketers. And you are clearly the exception to the rule and exception to the norm. So I would love to hear a bridge in a way between the idea of debate and specifically this format and how you believe we should be qualifying and preparing, our leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah, sure. So just a couple of things, for people that aren't familiar with Lincoln Douglas debating, it basically is a topic that is, thorny and complex, and what you do if you're a Lincoln Douglas debater is you prepare both sides of the argument. And then literally as you're going up to give your, at the debate, you are told which side. And the reason why I just think it's important in today's world is that things are so polarized and people are, falling back to kind of broad statements on very complex issues that really need to be worked through together rather than sort of saying, it's either A or B. Like the world just isn't presenting problems that are that simple to solve, and yet we've sort of devolved into that kind of type of language system and the way we think about presenting our arguments and that sort of thing. So I actually think that notion of really trying to take a look at what the other side of the argument is really important. Even if that, what I always say, that's one of my superpowers, is always understanding what the other side of the story is. That doesn't mean I need to change my story. If you talk to most Lincoln Douglas debaters, they have a preference for one side or the other. They can win more on a certain type of the argument. But knowing deeply what the other side thinks and feels and what is valid around that and what isn't valid, I think is a really important skill set. And the way I use it the most in marketing is really sort of around two different things. One is it gets really easy to slip into platitudes when it comes to marketing, and specifically when you get into kind of the purpose realm around marketing. And so if you're really taking a look at both sides, I think you can land the emotion and the nuance of many of these things much more significantly. And I also believe that you can look at what your own organization is doing on any of the purpose topics with clearer eyes, which is really important to land that well. And then the second thing is, I've got a couple of things that are unique about my job. One is I own both marketing and some portion of our sales environment. And I have, marketing, and then we've got, as most organizations do, sort of our ongoing conversations with the business. So I always ask when I'm meeting with my team and they're incensed about something or some, right that needs to be fixed, I always say, so if I was meeting with the other side, what would they tell me that I need to know so that we can craft a solution that will stick? Again, it doesn't, in my mind, it's not about whether you're right or wrong. It's really about what's the other perspective that we're going to assume is legitimate and valuable and needs to be addressed. And therefore, how do we build that into the solution we want to bring forth?
What an incredible point. And it, I even wrote about this idea. I called it heresy, but it's this idea of slaying those sacred cows. But suddenly my mind is filled with so much when we think about conflict and conflict resolution. It is the ultimate ability to be humble and to be selfless, and to recognize that everything has an element of truth, right? It can never just be all right or all wrong.
Right.
So I love.
And for me, it's actually also a really big piece of confidence. I'm confident enough in myself and my viewpoint and my team to really sort of examine whether or not we've got it 100% right? That's being confident too, is to say, I think I'm a lot right, but I don't have to be 100% right. I can be better when we sort of consider all the viewpoints together. Sorry, I kind of interrupted you, but
no. There's also, it makes me think of that other saying, which is, do you in relationships, right? Do you want to be right or do you want to be kind, right? Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Why can't, I think it theoretically, academically, viscerally, it's so obvious, but the practicality is there's ego, there's fear of being wrong, of not being perfect. These are all, I think, life lessons, but also survival lessons for marketing and for marketers, which is to not be so damn perfect or try and aspire to be, and realize that we should be as flawed as our very customers that are just trying to survive and get through the day.
Yeah, I love that.
So let me ask you to. I'm definitely not going to ask you to debate me, because I would lose. But I will ask you whether you want to embody the Lincoln Douglas approach. There's so many of these wonderful contradictions in marketing, right? The branding versus direct response. But the other one that I think you probably have more interest in is the idea of technology, automation, AI, and then maybe on the other side, humanity. So maybe I'll just ask you to argue both sides, and then obviously I have a feeling you're gonna come to a beautiful place in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my friends always laugh at me because, they do say that to know me is to know that I will always express something as an and statement rather than an or statement. If you ask me if I want to go to the beach or to the mountains, I would say I want to go to the beach and the mountains. And that's the way I would reply to that question. But from perhaps a slightly surprising way, I absolutely believe that technology is critical to creativity, because what it does is it allows, if you do it right, you allow technology to do the things it does exceptionally well, which are typically the things that humans don't, right? So if you think about like going through large amounts of data, if you think about regulated and rule driven responses, those are things that technology does exceptionally well, and that can do it very quickly and very cheaply, if you will. On the flip side, humans can take that data and think about the relationships. They can think about the exceptions to the rules and how we want to respond to that. They can think about the emotion of an activity, not the core elements of an activity. So again, to me, those are not trade-offs, and they're not even like, technology to me doesn't threaten any of our marketers. It is all about providing greater access, scalability, like really allowing our humans on our teams to do things that only they can do exceptionally well.
Well, I mean, everything you just said there is so important because there's a clear strategic role. It's almost like technology, it's know your place. But maybe we are struggling as humans to know what our place is. And I think if you can, it becomes almost like, if I'm using an analogy, like the Avengers, speaking of superpowers, technology is a superhero with its superpowers. Humanity is a superhero with its superpowers, and when they work together, they form the Avengers, and they defeat Thanos.
Yeah, love it.
Now I'm going to ask you, who is Thanos? No, I'm not. I want to jump for a second to something that I think. I mean, surprise, surprise. Deloitte was there. A good, I mean, this is an article from over a year ago, where everyone's going gaga over virtual worlds and and Web3 and the whole metaverse. Deloitte's been reimagining what this hybrid or what this virtual existence would look like, and I found this wonderful article, which I'll paste the link in the notes as well. And I love the thought leadership associated with this idea of understanding, first of all, putting it in context of communication and collaboration. You could add creativity there as well. But going through the ages and really understanding back from the letter through the telegraph, through the telephone, email, conference calls, mobile phone, text message, video conferencing, and then eventually we get to virtual world, and surprise, surprise, something that we aren't talking about, which is immersive holography. Is that the right word? Holography. And I also love how the keys, the markers, audio, visual, spatial, right? We're in this world of Clubhouse, etc. So I definitely had a little bit of a geek out to that, and would love to hear your point of view. As a leader, as a CMO, but also personally, where we are, where we're sitting, where we're heading, and maybe how you see this impacting in terms of marketing, customer relations, even talent. I'm sure you could. I know there were 85 questions in there. I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's all good. And I actually love this topic because to me, it's really inextricable as well as about, I can't remember if you mentioned this or not, but for those of you that know me, I love tennis. And I always joke that the last couple of years have been a lot like my tennis game, where the highs are high and the lows are low. But to me, the notion of virtual is a little bit like that with respect to what we want to do when we think about a world in which we have choice between what we do physically and what we do virtually. We really want to be able to not have to, again, it's a little bit like the Lincoln Douglas. There's a lot of nuance to it, right? So it's never going to be just virtual or just physical in the same way that it was before. So the thing that we're really trying to do is when we have choice, how do we make decisions about what those choices are? And, one of the things that we believe very significantly at Deloitte is that, people need to participate in those choices. And so we have a lot of, kind of guidelines for our people, but what is right for one team probably isn't right for another team, which, maybe in another geography, maybe solving different kinds of problems and all that sort of thing. So one of the things that we've really tried to talk through is, first of all, what are the things that virtual gets you that you cannot get when you're physically together? What are the things that physical gets you that you cannot get when you're virtual? And then what are the moments that matter that would make you choose either virtual, physical, or some hybrid model? And there's a couple of things that I think are really important about that for us to get right going forward. The first one is, if you take a look at it, virtual did some extraordinary things for us. And in my mind, that at the top of the list is the whole notion of inclusion. You could include more people virtually than we could physically because of cost and constraints, right? And so I really don't want to let go of that, right? We were able to get more of our teams, quote unquote, in the room, in a world in which we know that being in the room really matters. And we were able to let more people participate and shape things, which I really, again, I can't say it strongly enough. I really hope we never lose that. On the flip side, as we know well, there were lots of things that we lost around sort of the human connection and the emotion of actually seeing each other and being with each other that we want to infuse back in that. On the flip side, I also say, though, that in the last couple of years, my teams have actually understood more about me as a complete person than they did prior to that, because they know that my son comes down and they know exactly what he looks like, and he comes down to give me a kiss on the way to his school. And they know my dog on early morning calls, because I'm on the West Coast, I do a lot of early morning calls, needs to sit in my lap because nobody else in the home, is able to take him out. I know he won't get into trouble if he's on my lap. They know that these shells behind me were shells that I've collected for the last, 25 years. They know things about me that they never knew before, even if I was a pretty transparent person at work. So there's just a lot of things that are going on that are both good and bad. So again, our belief is with the future of work is that it's really teasing out what are the advantages and benefits of all of the modes that we want to incorporate, and then when is the right time to use those, and how do we help our people make those choices? Because in most instances, they'll need to really participate in those decisions versus us prescribing it for them.
Lubna says, I hadn't looked at it in that way, and nor had I. I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful insight. And then it made me think, Suzanne, that if we actually go one step further and we think about a virtual environment where we are now avatars, or we represent avatars, it actually takes that inclusivity to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is there still are some of our employees or our team members who don't have the, I say I have privilege of having ring lights and having, my roadcaster that when you say something profound, which is all the time, I can give you that. But I realize how lucky I am to have this microphone and to have this equipment. And when we take it to the next level and we're all on this level virtual playing field, we can be even more inclusive, and maybe a little bit, maybe get to know the real people, even though we look anything but.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, for us, that was a big deal as well, is the technology kind of turned the tables. Some of our most senior leaders were used to some of the trappings of, having assistants schedule phone calls and, sort of being in office spaces. And then all of a sudden things were really turned, and some of our most junior professionals were most comfortable with some of, so that was actually a moment of humanity that was really good for all of us as well. And sort of this notion that we're all in this together, and to have grace and really look to how can I help you, right? Whether again, with it's a ring light, or saying, I don't care if your lighting isn't perfect, right? I can still hear you. I can still, read your thoughts as they exist on paper, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the humanity of the moment is something that is tremendous, and that we, just absolutely need to lean into.
I think you just Lincoln Douglased me, which which is because you're right. Back to the fact that we've become a lot more accepting, and acceptance has increased as well. So that that's a great point too. There's so many things that I want to talk to you about, and I feel like we're definitely I'm going to need you to come back as my co-host. People, we're getting to that time at the end of the year where everybody wants predictions. Everybody wants to figure out what lies ahead. Where should we skate to? Where is the puck going to be? But before we get there, I would love for you to look back on this year. I mean, for me, I've had tremendous health issues, and I'm literally saying to 2021, and don't let the door slam hit you on the way out. But what would you say is a highlight for you, and maybe a low light of this year?
Yeah, sure. And I'll just preface that with saying that I and my family have been very lucky with respect to our health and our environment and all of that sort of thing. So everything I say is with a lot of thankfulness around that. But certainly for me, the highlights were about the friendships, and again, the human nature of this. Whether it was going into this time period, I traveled a lot, and so I missed a lot of dinners and breakfasts with my family, and that's been a highlight. We've had a group of individuals that have been doing walks twice a week together, and an age span that went from 10 to probably 60. So I think there are lots of things like that I will, I really honestly don't ever want to give up. I know I will give it up to some extent. I think on the flip side, professionally, there were things that we would have said weren't possible at the scale and the magnitude that we now say, like, yeah, we can do that. And we have it underway. So I think those things, sort of the freeing of what we thought were traditional or, and significant constraints, has gone away. And again, I've said it before, but the humanity of the moment are two really positive things. I do think on the flip side, the tendency for people to feel really isolated, and the notion that we've struggled a little bit with collaboration and innovation in this environment are the low lights. I definitely am one that believes in what we like most about something is inextricably linked with what we like least, and vice versa. So I do think that all of those things that we like least about those times, the promise of them is that we lean into them and figure out what we can do with them. And so that's what I'm hopeful for in 2022.
Beautifully articulated. David Libby says, starting with humility and gratitude was awesome. Thanks for that. And Lubna adds, so powerful to start with gratitude
thank you.
and appreciation. We were talking about my teaching, and last week I taught my NYU students about the archetypes, about the various personas. And one of the things that I love most about these Jungian personas is that every one of our powers can corrupt us if we over-index in it. And so it's exactly that, whether it's the hero, whether it's the jester, whether it's, the everyman or every person, it's being able to find that balance. And I know one of those balances that you also talk about now is marketing's role and marketing's responsibility, in terms of, as you talk about educational outcomes, responsible climate choices, I think something that you're getting to achieving net zero emissions by 2030. It's wonderful to see again that leadership recognizing, guess what? This isn't just about selling stuff and keeping customers happy, we got to also keep communities and even this planet of ours protected and nurtured as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I feel very again, very lucky to be part of, maybe lucky is not the right word, but very privileged to be part of Deloitte, in the sense that it's a 175-year-old brand, and we're not new to the purpose game. But again, one of the things that did materially happen, and interestingly enough, it happened, we started really kind of rethinking what our role was from a purpose perspective in probably 2018, 2019. And it was this notion of, are we doing enough? Are we doing everything we can be doing? And, if you think of things like on the climate side, and while that seems easy, everybody can be committed to climate and that sort of thing. Well, as we looked around, we said, well, hold on, we have more people flying from client to client than, probably anybody, because we're so large. We have lots of meetings going on where we're bringing in single-use water bottles. And those things were inconvenient, but we couldn't be authentic on this topic of climate until we did the things that were hard to do, right? And very inconvenient for us. So if you think about us flying less, it's one thing to say flying less, but that's actually the way we produced our product, which is our offering, which is our services, right? And so we had to really rethink how we could get those numbers down. Again, and this was pre the world going virtual, right? But then, similarly, like, how are we going to get water in the hands of our people without having them in single-use bottles and things like that? And that's what I always say is the tricky part for most organizations around purpose. Is it sort of sounds easy to say we're for this, but really taking a look and thinking about, one of my favorite sayings is to say life is lived in the small moments of every day. So what are the small moments of every day that you're either contributing to that purpose or eroding that purpose? And that's when things really get, kind of real.
And that wonderful question, are we doing enough? Everything should begin, just like expressing humility and gratitude, everything should begin with this idea of, can we do more? Do we have an obligation, a responsibility to do more? I must say, I feel very heartened for the future of marketing, which is a profession that has been under a lot of stress and duress of late. And it's why I always find a quote for my guests. This is the quote that I found for you, Suzanne. Marketing takes a day to learn and a lifetime to master. And this was said by one of my mentors, and someone who I've had on the show and I've got to know. One of the highlights of my life was sharing the stage with him in Caracas, Venezuela, and hanging out with him. And that's Professor Philip Kotler. Marketing takes a day to learn and a lifetime to master. Always, always be learning. So, Suzanne, I guess time for one more question, and I am excited to pour into this. But Deloitte, I'm like Augustus Gloop. I'm a kid in a candy store. Deloitte has just put out its 2022 Global Marketing Trends Report. You can get a link to that, and you don't need to even worry about copying that whole URL down, because I will paste it for you along with that virtual, that beautiful virtual worlds or virtual evolution. Tell us a little bit about maybe the Global Marketing Trends Report. One thing perhaps that is coming down the pike that is interesting, that you're passionate about.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you two things. The first thing that I'm passionate about with this trends report, and the reason why I think it's really good for people to read, is it's one of the few reports that pulls across the C-suite. So it has a disproportionate amount of CMOs that respond to the trends report and are part of the research, but it actually is trying to figure out the role of the CMO and marketing within the broader executive team. So that's what I personally love about it. I love figuring out, how is the CEO thinking about marketing? How is the CFO thinking about marketing these days? So that's one thing that I just prefaced, which I think is an interesting twist to this particular trends report. And then there's so many things. It's sort of saying which one of your friends is your best friend, right? There's lots of different things I get from the different trends.
Right, or which child is your favorite?
Right, which child is that? I only have one child, so I can't really use that. So I am trying to do a lot of those things around, like, thinking about data in a cookieless world. And I definitely think a lot about customer centricity. I'm doing some pretty interesting work right now where we're calling it Reimagine Go-to-Market. And so how do we think about this sort of newly hybrid world, and how should it be changing the way we go to market? So there's a lot of different things, but read the report and let me know which one resonates with you and with your audience.
I certainly will. And, when you mention the words customer centricity, if you're looking for someone to bounce things off, this guy is very interested. I
would love that. I told you as I was preparing for this, I read excerpts from Flip the Funnel, and I thought there were some great things that made me think about it.
Well, I'll tell you two things about, one thing about Flip the Funnel is I actually outlined what is now my own crypto creator coin. Universal currency essentially was the wireframe, right? You can buy, sell, redeem, exchange, gift, hold currency. Then Nike has a swoosh, Coca-Cola has a ribbon. But the other thing is, in my latest book, I actually tried to take the word one step further, and I spoke about customer obsession. And so that became almost like it clearly can't be an unhealthy one. But I felt like we needed to actually customer service, customer satisfaction, customer centricity. I felt like we could do more to express this passion and this commitment, to the. And by the way, employee obsession is the same thing. So
yeah, no, I love that. And just, I know we're out of time, but really quickly, I would love to riff on that with you sometime, because I do believe in today's world, the magic of it is that people want to shape each other. There's a saying that Zora Neale Houston says that I love, which is basically about the ocean and the shore shape each other. And so I do think this notion of really customers wanting to influence your brand and employees wanting to live out the mission and influence it, and how do you react to each other and how do you lean into that, is one of the most exciting things of our times. It's hard, but it's really, really exciting.
Well, one of the most exciting things of my time was this time spending it with you. I just want to thank you. If you want to connect with Suzanne on Twitter, you can do that at Suzanne_Kounkel, or if you're spelling it out, Kounkel, but it's Kounkel. You can on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. If you want to find out what makes her nervous, you can try and do that. But most importantly, go and make yourself nervous. It is when you are truly alive, when you feel that little bit uncomfortable. And so the only thing left to do, by the way, David Libby says, oh, this was fantastic. Thank you. Lubna says, people shape each other, people shape culture, and culture shapes people. Appreciate those points of view. But the real point of view that we care about is Chuck Norris's. So we want to understand, what did Chuck Norris have to say about Suzanne Kounkel?
You are Chuck Norris approved.
We will be back tomorrow with the Clubhouse Creator. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing, with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.